Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome into another episode of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast. Today, we're talking about decisions that could shape the Raiders for the next decade plus. I'm talking about the two quarterbacks at the top of the draft that everybody is talking about, Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. We just got our best look yet at both of them on the biggest stage, the college football playoff quarterfinals, going up against legit programs who have legit talent in real pressure-packed situations. So today, I'm breaking down what they showed, what they didn't, and which way I think the Raiders should be leaning right now. But that's just the start of it all. We're also bringing in my guy Sterling Holmes from Sports Radio 810 out there in Kansas City to talk about this week's season finale against the Chiefs. We dive all the way into the tankathon for the Raiders, how Andy Reid and company might approach this game, whether or not the Chiefs would actually try to block the Raiders from getting that shot at the number one overall pick, and whether the Silver and Black do actually have any real path to a win against this version of the Chiefs. And then we go a step further. And look, I know you guys hate the Chiefs. Believe me, I do get it. But there's no denying the dynasty that they have built over the years. Yes, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are a huge part of it. You can't just replicate those two guys in particular, but there's so much more to how that organization was built, and there are real lessons that the Raiders can take from it. Sterling and I break down all of that. This is a big picture conversation, really, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it heading into Sunday. But before we get there, you know what time it is. It's our question of the day, and I want to know, what did you guys think of Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore in their playoff games? Did either performance change your opinion on them for better or for worse? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button as well and subscribe too. And head to silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and also subscribe to our free Raiders newsletter. Doing those two things is the best way that you can support the channel. So with all that out of the road, you guys are already tapped into everything that's coming your way. Let's get this bad boy rolling. All right, guys, this is a big week for the Raiders. The top pick is on the line, and they need a quarterback. At the latest, we'll know by Sunday night if they're picking first or second, and that will obviously dictate a lot about how they approach this draft. And even though we got to figure out for sure if both Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore will be entering the draft, we know that they're the guys that are sitting at the top of everyone's draft boards right now. So today, we're going to dive into what we saw from them in the college football playoff quarterfinals this week. We learned a lot about both of them, really, and we will start this thing with Fernando Mendoza and what he showed against the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right, guys, and look, let's just start by reading off his stat line in this game. He goes 14 of 16 for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, look, I totally understand that this is not the same Alabama team that we have seen in recent years and all that stuff. It's not the Nick Saban version of the Alabama Crimson Tide, but they are still Alabama. They still made it to the college football playoff, and they are still an SEC team, one of the top teams in the SEC. And also there's the fact, too, that Alabama is still loaded. They have 14 players in their starting lineup that were former top 100 recruits. Get this, Indiana had just one in their starting lineup that was a former top 100 recruit. That's insane. We'll dive more into that and kind of what Signetti and Mendoza have played a part in building there at Indiana. But right now, I do want to talk about Fernando Mendoza and what he showed in this game. I thought, and it was really easy to see, obviously that first drive, like, look, Alabama cranked up the pressure. They were mixing the looks up and stuff like that, and the O-line had some trouble blocking some guys. There were some free rushers. Mendoza gets sacked on the first drive. After that, I thought he really settled in, and like as you guys saw, with all the fact that the disparity in terms of talent and star recruits and all that stuff, which doesn't really mean anything, obviously, once you're already out there playing, just like when you get drafted in the league and everything, but go back and look at it. If you just take the names and the logos off of these two teams and you were to say, all right, Indiana and Alabama played, you would think that Indiana was actually Alabama, given the history of that program. You know what I mean? And so it didn't even look like Alabama belonged out on the field with them. It was 38-3. And I was really impressed overall with what I saw from Fernando Mendoza after that first drive. Okay, he really settled in. They were showing a commitment to running the football, and I think they did a good job of committing to the run after that fact as well, after that first drive, to settle things down. And then they really got the play action passing game going. And honestly, like, he just trusted what he saw. Obviously, he's such a smart kid. He always talks about the prep and how he does all the homework, and then he's a nerd or a dork, all those different things. But like, it was very clear to see that he was trusting what he was seeing, and he was letting it rip, especially on that second drive. I was really impressed, and we saw some of the big-time throws that he did make. There's that deep corner route that he made on one of them, and then the 3 touchdown passes as well, delivering perfect balls on all three of those. Now, one thing that I will say, and some people are going to interpret this as a knock, and I don't really necessarily mean it in that sense, but go back and look at those touchdowns. There was a lot of room for those Indiana receivers. Those guys won their one-on-one battles and created a lot of space for Fernando Mendoza. There weren't these like super tight window throws in those situations on those touchdown passes. The first one in particular, if memory serves me right, they're in zero coverage with no safety help over the top. The safety might have also kind of bit on the dig, but they're running an in-breaking route with outside leverage in that zero coverage. And obviously they go and throw on that post, and any quarterback is throwing it there, any quarterback worth their salt. But Mendoza does do it and put it on the money there. The fade, which I believe was his last touchdown, look, the guy just got beat. Now, he delivered a beautiful NFL-style throw down the sideline. Nice looping, dropped it right into the bucket there, but still had plenty of room to work with. Again, because the receivers won. And then even on the second one as well, he bought some time. He was really good at sitting back there, falling back into the pocket, and being patient and letting it develop. But his receiver, again, also just outran the corner. So I was really impressed with what I saw out of his receiving core and what they showed in that game. They dominated for sure. But having said all of that, you still have to make the right decision. We've seen it with Geno Smith. A lot of times he hasn't necessarily made the right decision, or he's thrown into bad situations and it's turned into interceptions. Well, look, yes, college and the NFL is different, but Mendoza made the right reads, made the right choices, and put the ball on the money and delivered it. There were a couple really nice throws where he was throwing into tight windows or between two or three guys and things like that. So again, just overall, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Fernando Mendoza. He showed the command that you want to see, the presence, the poise, all that different stuff, and just really had that thing cooking. Even when they had, I believe when they settled for the field goal, when they had the communication issues and the headset went out or whatever it actually was, like he's sitting there, the football IQ, like he just knows how to kind of run things and how the operation should go, and still stayed poised and was like, yo, get the call in. Like, he didn't panic or anything like that. You know what I mean? And yes, they did settle for the field goal, but they go and run. So it was like a punt of a play there, given the situation that they were in. But just overall, really impressed with what I saw out of him. And also, too, people don't talk about this enough. He's a kid that obviously does have some athleticism, and he put that on display. He did it with his legs. He's 6'5", 225, and he goes and rushes in this game for a decent amount, okay? He finishes, let's look at the stats real quick here. Fernando goes 8 rushes for 16 yards, and it felt like even more than that. But at his size, that's something that I think scouts really wanted to see, especially at this stage of the game, on this stage, in the playoff. Show that mobility, show that you have that, because that just unlocks so much more for staffs, for offensive coordinators, all of that stuff in the NFL. If a guy can move, especially a guy at his size can move like that, offensive coordinators are going to be drooling because of all the other stuff, all the other intangibles that he has, and the accuracy and all that stuff. But again, going back to it, 14 of 16. That is ridiculous efficiency for him to be able to do it. Average 12 yards of completion and goes for 3 touchdowns. I mean, look, that's about as perfect as you could ask for to do in a college football playoff game against Alabama. Very, very, very impressed with Mendoza. Now, look, I will put the caveat with all of this is that they ran the ball 50 times. 50 carries for the running backs for 215 yards. That's pretty damn good. If you have a quarterback that's got a running game like that to support him, any quarterback worth their salt is going to have success. Now, that's not taking anything away from Mendoza, but we do have to add that caveat in there, the simple fact that they ran the ball so well. And, I mean, that's not balanced, but they were balanced early on, and that just helped the whole flow of it. We have seen with the Raiders, when that balance isn't there, how much harder that makes it really on everybody involved, from the play caller all the way down to the quarterback and obviously the running back as well. So just really impressed with him and what I saw. Great job, obviously, by Indiana by dominating in the trenches. But Fernando Mendoza showed like he can make every throw in the book. He showed he's got the poise. He showed all the stuff that we've seen throughout the year, that is, from the Hoosiers and all the different things that they did before. Again, obviously going to Oregon and beating them in some pressure-cooked situations there. Going to Penn State, I think it was. I've got their schedule pulled up here. Let me just see. Yeah, they went to Penn State and won. He made those great throws on that drive to go down and win the game. They obviously beat Ohio State in the Big 12 or Big 10 championship game as well. So he's done it on the big stage. We've seen the resume, so I'm not trying to overreact to him or Dante Moore in the quarterfinals right now of what we saw, but he's got the resume to back it up. And then he goes and does what he did against Alabama, and you just got to love what you saw from him. And now I'll get into the comparison between him and Dante Moore and where I'm at in a second, because first, I want to talk about Indiana, and then we'll go talk about Dante Moore, okay? And I know this is a Raiders podcast, but I just think this is something we got to talk about. Think about what Indiana has done in Curt Signetti's first 2 years there. It's insane. He went to the playoff his first year there. Yes, they lose to Notre Dame, but then now he's back in the playoff, just dominated Alabama, and right now they're the odds-on favorite to win the college football playoff. Indiana, a basketball school. And it's crazy to me that we're not talking about Curt Signetti as being like in the rumor mill of up for like a head coaching job in the NFL, or at least his name even being thrown in the hat. You know what I mean? If another coach does this, people are going to be talking about it and saying this guy deserves a shot at the next level. And we haven't heard it at all from him. And all he has done is win every step of the way. He used to be a receivers coach at Alabama and then left and went D2 and then FCS and all that stuff, climbed his way through the ranks, grinded it out and won quick everywhere he was at. And he talked that talk too as well. You know, the whole Google me, all I do is win type of thing. And he has backed it up every step of the way. So I don't know what it is. Does somebody have something on him or what? If you guys know why he's not thrown into the rink, you know, or his name's not being thrown into the hat for some of these jobs, I'd love to know because maybe there's something I'm missing here. But this guy, even as just like a CEO style head coach, if you want to call him that, I mean, look, he has gotten them ready to go. Also, too, as I'm talking about this, pointing to the fact of look how bad the teams have played in the college football playoffs so far with the first round bye. They had all lost all of their opportunities. I think it was 0-6. I can't remember the exact number, but they had all lost in their first opportunity after the bye. Well, not anymore because Curt Signetti got these guys ready to play against a tough Alabama team that, again, is loaded with a lot of talent. You know what I mean? So, like, that speaks volumes about him getting his guys ready to play. And anyway, this is a podcast, like I said, for the Raiders and talking about the quarterbacks that they could possibly have an opportunity to draft. And like I said, neither one of these guys has officially declared for the draft, but let's be real, Mendoza's coming out. He's going to be available at the top of the draft. The big question is going to be, does Dante Moore actually come out? And also, too, where do the Raiders end up? But in terms of Dante Moore, it was one of those things where, like, I don't want to dunk on him by any means because he played well. Like, he took what the defense gave him, but it wasn't this, like, incredible performance. And I'm not saying that, you know, Fernando Mendoza did have that. Like, he had a solid game. He showed you everything you already thought about him. So that's why I'm a little more high on him and what I saw in that game. And maybe it sounds a little bit more, like, inflammatory of, like, God, he's in a class of his own, whatever. Like, but he kind of backed that up. Whereas with Dante Moore, it wasn't super sexy. It wasn't super flashy. Like, yes, they win 23-0 against Texas Tech, who has a solid defense. You know, one of the top defenses in all of college football, if not the top defense. This team has won with their defense, you know, so often. We know how good that front seven is, specifically those guys coming off the edge as well. And they showed a couple times in this game. With Dante, I thought he did a good job. They were playing a lot of off coverage, just taking what the defense was giving him. Even the same thing, kind of in that same vein with, Fernando Mendoza too. He was doing that as well. It wasn't anything like, oh my God, can you believe he just made that throw or that insane moment? But Dante Moore was also pretty dang good. I believe 26 of 33. I think that is 78% completion percentage. Like, pretty damn good if you ask me. 234 yards, no touchdowns, but he does throw that one interception. That was one when the linebacker's just reading his eyes. You have to see that. You cannot throw it right to him. That was a bad decision. But overall, like I said, with that off coverage, a lot of room for these Oregon receivers. Obviously, there's a ton of speed and talent on this team. Texas Tech respects those dudes. And I thought for the most part, he did a great job of checking down or finding the guys when they were open. I like the way that he did attack the outside lanes at times too. We saw that. Some really solid placement on some balls, but also some where he missed some throws too. And also at times there were a couple opportunities where he missed some deep shots down the field that were there too. On the broadcast, they noted one of them to the tight end. He was wide open on a play action pass and he hesitated and missed him, had to take off and run, and I believe they ended up punting. I think that was on third down. So, like, again, the youth kind of showed a bit, and you weren't, like, totally wowed by anything that he did out there. Again, not saying I didn't like his game, but there are just some things where you can poke some holes in it. And obviously, like, look, the O-line was struggling to block those dudes. There was some snap issues, even though on one point, though, too, on an exchange with a running back. Like, you know, he can't let that happen either. But I was not blown away by what I saw from Dante Moore. It, again, just looked like a young guy that was, again, efficient, took what the defense gave him, looked like a good game manager, but you can still see the youth with some of the missed opportunities and things like that. But he was very, like, steady Eddie, level-headed. I love that. Like, him and Mendoza don't look like dudes that you can really shake. And so, like, from that regard, like, really like what the kid brings to the table. But having said all of that, of the two games and kind of what they showed. And yes, Dante goes and carried 10 times, but he ends up finishing for negative 12 yards. Obviously, there's going to be some sacks and stuff involved in there with how good that Texas Tech front was. Oh, and there's also the one when he's scrambling down in the red zone there too, and he throws what looked like was going to be into coverage, and the end gets his hand up and bats it down. I think he's fortunate that it was batted down because he was thrown into some area where there were a lot of dudes around. Something bad or worse might have actually happened. And also, too, the one thing that stands out is you go back and look, like I said, Indiana made Alabama look like they didn't belong on the field with them. They crushed them in every sense of the word. They really did dominate 38-3. But in this game here with Oregon and Texas Tech, with Dante Moore at the helm, 23-0, they're really, like, it didn't feel like a dominating win. Texas Tech was always kind of hanging around if you were watching that game. So it wasn't like the dominating performance that I would have liked to see out of a guy like Dante against a defense like this, which again is the best quality that he's going to be able to see in this run here in the playoffs, So like, the thing is like they had the 2 interceptions, and then also at one point they started, I think after Texas Tech turned it over on downs, they started in really good field position, and they weren't able to make Texas Tech pay and weren't able to bury them. Like there were a bunch of opportunities to do that. I thought some of it was a little bit of game flow and like how they called it. They did run the ball 47 times, weren't super effective doing it. They ran for just 64 yards on the day. And obviously, like, look, there's negative 12 yards from Dante that's impacting some of that total, but that's not some massive number. When you run 47 times, you should definitely gain more than 64 yards. That's only 1.4 yards per carry. So again, the script and the way they were doing it in terms of running and all that, like, didn't love how that hurt or how that helped Dante Moore. You know what I mean? Like, you would have liked to see them be a little bit more effective there. But in the moments that he had, again, took what the defense gave him, but I would have liked to see him wow a little bit more, I guess, again, for a young guy. But he is still a young guy, and I am real curious to see what happens with him, going forward. Because, again, his offensive coordinator is leaving. I understand that they're promoting from within, but it's still a new play caller. And also, like I've said, on the podcast multiple times, that, you go ahead and look in that class for next year, the 27 class, it is stacked. It looks like it's going to be real stacked. If you have an opportunity to be the first or second quarterback taken off the board, I don't care how much Oregon's going to pay you to come back. You go out in the draft and you take that guaranteed money and you learn and develop. Maybe you sit because you are young. Who knows where he ends up going? But I think he does end up coming out. I know that there's a lot of rumblings that he's going to go back. It probably would be best for him. And maybe all those talents and the things that you hear people saying, the uncoachables that he has, emerge if he does go back. And maybe he beats out a lot of those guys that are slated to be at the top of the draft. Who knows? But I think if it's me, I'm saying he's going to come out when he looks at the landscape of things. You know what I mean? And then you go and look at it too, also as the third quarterback. I mean, we were so lucky heading into this, this college football playoff, and the simple fact of like how many guys that have first round grades or that would be first round quarterbacks if they come out that we're getting a look at. We haven't had a look like this really since like 2020, the Trevor Lawrence year and stuff like that with Justin Fields and all those dudes when they were all in the mix in terms of guys that are highly graded like that are first round type talents, and they're playing in the playoff and giving us opportunity to really get a look at them against this top competition. So that is super cool. And included in that is Simpson as well from Alabama. And look, it was a tough one for him, obviously. Like, Ty Simpson struggles against this team, Indiana in general. Like, they were all over him, and Indiana just shut him down. But I thought at times, like, man, he was out running around, running for his life, but I like the way that he used the mobility. Had kind of a strong finish to the season, but it was a bit of a roller coaster ride for him. Ultimately, after he gets knocked out of the game, you hate to see that. That's tough for him. I think he does end up going back to Alabama. Talking with some folks, I think it makes sense for him to do that. Probably be better for him in the long run to go back and develop and get another run at it with DeBoer and the Crimson Tide. But anyway, today, again, like I said, we're talking about the two dudes that I believe will be at the top of the draft. That's going to be Mendoza and Dante Moore. And between the two of them, to me, honestly, with what we just saw today, and I know you can't always look at it in a chamber, but that's what I'm doing right now, specifically on this episode, I think it's obviously Fernando Mendoza and then Dante Moore, and I think it's a very clear, big gap there. And yes, there's a couple years difference in there, and different styles of play and all that stuff, but I just like what Mendoza has done. You go and look at Oregon, we talked about this with Ryan Hogue and all the talent that they have, and then you go and look at Indiana, and obviously they have a lot of talent, but in terms of, the stars and all that stuff, I hate leaning on that on the top, 100 recruits with the 4 or 5 stars, all that stuff. It's not like their roster's really loaded with it. And so I just think that he has done more with less. And more often than not, when Oregon goes out on the field, their dudes are just going to be better athletes than everybody else. And not to knock Indiana, but so many times they match up against these teams, whether it's the Ohio States of the world or the Oregons of the world or even the Penn States of the world, stuff like that. They're undermanned in terms of athleticism and stuff like that, but all they do is figure out a way to win, and Fernando Mendoza is a big part of that. So if it were me, and if I were calling the shots, I'm going all in on Fernando Mendoza because he has everything you could possibly want, and at least he showed a lot of that in that game against Alabama. Obviously, he showed the accuracy off the charts. He showed the decisiveness. He showed the ability to read and react, and even showed the mobility, too, to get out and run and make defenses have to respect that and think about another element of his game. So again, for me, that's the way that I am leaning. Now, let's keep this thing rolling. We'll get to our conversation with Sterling in just a second, because first I do want to talk about something that's pretty cool with, Ashton Jeanty. It has obviously been a really rough season for the Raiders, and Ashton specifically being able to run the football and all that, but he's still had plenty of success. He's sitting at 1,227 total yards from scrimmage. And get this, he's only 90 yards away from breaking Josh Jacobs' rookie record for total scrimmage yards by a rookie, that is. And so I think that's pretty insane. So that's something just to keep an eye on in this matchup. If you want one other thing to kind of root for, I know a lot of fans rooting against the Raiders to be able to lock down the top pick, and I totally understand that. I hate it as a fan of the game and things like that. Like I've said it many times. I'm actually a Buccaneers fan, and I've gone through some rough years, and I hated any time I'd have to root against them. And there were times when I did that because that's the kind of fan that I am, because I'll look ahead and I'm like, hey, if the season's over, I want better draft positioning. Does that make me less of a fan? I don't know, but I ain't judging any of you guys for feeling that type of way about wanting the Raiders to lose or anything like that. Like, I totally get it and totally understand it. But in terms of something you can look to as like a positive to pull away from it, and a cool thing for Ashton Jeanty is, again, the fact that he is just 90 yards from scrimmage away from breaking Josh Jacobs' record. In his rookie season, Josh Jacobs put up, where is it right here? He put up 1,300, I believe it was. He put up 1,316 yards from scrimmage as a rookie back in 2019. The cool thing, though, is he actually did that in just 13 games. For Ashton, he'll have done it over the course of a whole season, but still pretty sweet to be able to do it for him. So that's something I know you guys would love to see out of Ashton. And again, something you can point to of a building block for whoever the quarterback does ultimately end up being. We've seen what Fernando can do with a good running game. Well, hey, if they fix that O-line, this kid's going to be sitting pretty. He has overcome it when he was at Cal. They had a bad offensive line, still looked good. Not the guy that he was now in terms of winning the Heisman and all that, but the Raiders have to have a plan to fix that offensive line if they do end up getting that top pick and they do end up landing Fernando Mendoza. Because, man, if you get Mendoza, if you fix that offensive line, you got Jeanty, you got Brock Bowers. For God's sakes, get this kid a top receiver as well. And who knows what ends up happening. But he seems to have it. And I'm real curious to see, one, how things pan out for him the rest of the way. I forgot to even mention the fact that we're going to get a real interesting look at both of these quarterbacks against each other again in the rematch now in the semifinals, because Oregon and Indiana are going to be playing each other. So that's great. We don't have to watch multiple games, even though I'm still going to be watching all the playoff games. But we'll be able to see those two guys go head-to-head. That's going to be a big one. Obviously, we'll be breaking that down on the next pod, or on our podcast after those games as well, to explain what we saw even more from them. And as each week goes by, I'm going to give you kind of my thoughts on the quarterbacks wholesale, what I saw in those games, but also with the resume as a whole and what it maybe translates to in the league. But that's kind of what I saw from both of those guys. Again, impressed with both of them. Very impressed with Fernando Mendoza. I thought he was the better of the two today. I don't think that's any shocking statement to make. With Dante Moore, he was just good. He wasn't great, but he was just good. And I think we got to see more from him. And that's kind of not a crazy statement to make either, because, like, that's the book on him. That's what everybody's kind of saying. He's 20 years old. He's only got in the teens in terms of starts. So still more to be seen from him. Real curious to see what he looks like against this Indiana defense that just completely shut down Alabama. That's going to be a fun one to watch. But anyway, guys, that's kind of my take on the quarterback situation and where the Raiders should probably be leaning right now. Again, if I'm them, I am leaning Fernando Mendoza, because to me, that dude looks like he is a guy that can change a franchise. I'm not the only one that feels that way. I know a lot of you guys feel that way from what you saw on Twitter. Ryan Hogue feels that way, and most of the other people that I talk to, they also feel that way. So I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. If they get the number one pick, I think he can turn in the card. I think it's going to be Fernando Mendoza. But we'll wait and see how this evaluation goes on, because crazy things happen. In the meantime, though, guys, let's now switch gears and talk about this game with the Chiefs and all the different things that are on the line, and also, too, how they built up their dynasty. We caught up with Sterling Holmes to talk about that, and it was a fun conversation, so I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. Check it out. All right, Sterling, welcome back into the show, man. We appreciate you jumping on with us a couple months ago. Now we're back at it. Obviously, the Chiefs in a very different spot, only won 2 games since that last one against the Raiders. I think Raiders fans have been rooting for this for so long, for the Chiefs to finally, be in the dumps and miss the playoffs, all that stuff. But now it's their worst nightmare because the first pick is on the line for the Raiders, and the Chiefs also need to lose for draft positioning as well. So what the heck are you expecting this week over at Allegiant Stadium?
A tank off. It is going to be a full-blown tank off. Yeah, Chiefs, I don't know. I feel bad. The Raiders are so bad, and it feels like things are getting worse. The whole Max Crosby situation, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Geno Smith, that doesn't really inspire much confidence. Small hands or a hand that throws a lot of picks doesn't matter. Chiefs, on the other hand, Chris Oladokun doesn't look to be, he's a practice squad quarterback. Great story. It's fun, easy to root for, but the Chiefs are missing so many players as well. So many pieces are gone. I know Andy Reid and Spags and Matt Nagy, they're going to try to win this game, but it just looks ugly. They played the Broncos close. So if you're a Raiders fan, that should inspire confidence that the Raiders will lose this game. But I know a lot of Chiefs fans and media, myself included, we wouldn't hate to see the Chiefs lose this one.
Yeah, look, that's where a lot of us, in the Raiders media and obviously the fan base is as well. And look, we saw the Raiders lose the tank off in a bad way the first time around to the Giants here this last week. What version of the Chiefs do you think shows up in this game? Is it the one that we saw against the Titans that lost that game to what many people thought were the worst team in the league before the Raiders came around and showed them up there? Or do you think it's that team that we saw against the Broncos that it played them close?
Probably a little closer to the Broncos. Because Chris Oladokun now has a full 10 days of practice, right? Yeah. So that's pretty big. Again, he kind of got thrust into action against the Titans because of Gardner Minshew going out very, very early in that one, which is funny because Chris Oladokun looked better in that Titans game than actually he did against the Broncos. But the defense played much better against the Broncos. Yeah, we'll see, and how many players and pieces are gonna how many young guys shall play for KC. Few guys that we're looking forward to seeing, but we've been looking forward to seeing all year, and they haven't gotten any run. Jeffrey Bassa, Jalen Royals, and Brashard Smith, 3 rookies from this year's draft class, hardly touched the ball at all. Actually, the last time was Brashard Smith against the Raiders in that blowout game. He had 14 carries. Last 2 weeks, he's had 0 apiece. There's been rumblings of him moving more or less to wide receiver, but it's perplexing to put it mildly. Chiefs and Andy Reid, they're trying to win. That's just what they do. They will not tank. So some guys might be held out. Right guard Trey Smith for his own health and safety. We'll see if Creed Humphrey, the best center in football, if he plays. I think he'll start just to keep the Iron Man-esque streak alive. But is it a quarter? Is it a drive? Is it the full game? We'll see.
Yeah. Do you think Andy Reid treats this kind of like a preseason game? Like, do you think he does kind of unload it and throw essentially the whole practice squad out there in a sense? Because you wish? No? Okay, gotcha. Interesting.
No,
why?
Until he does it, I will not believe it. Yeah. Because we thought he was going to do it against the Titans, and then he didn't. We thought he would do it against the Broncos, and he didn't. So until he shows me he will, I think everyone in the media in Kansas City feels the same way. We've wanted to see Jeffrey Bassa. He played 4 snaps last week. We wanted to see Jalen Royals. He had 0 targets last week. We wanted to see Brashard Smith. 0 carries last week. So until he does, there's no reason to believe he will. He played Mike Edwards last week. Past 2 weeks, Juju Smith-Schuster played 91 and 81% of snaps at wide receiver. So until he actually does it, we're not going to believe it.
Yeah, I think Raiders fans are in that same situation too, because for so long, they're waiting to see if a lot of the young guys, especially on the offensive line, were going to get some burn. And then they didn't really start to turn in that direction to treating it more kind of preseason-esque until they shut down Max Crosby. Obviously, that was due because he had been on the injury report for so long, but they shut down Max, they shut down Brock, Jeremy Chin as well. And now we've seen more of those young guys get in there. Still, they're still waiting on a couple guys to get there. In a bit, I want to continue because we've kind of doing a series on, rebuilding for the Raiders and things that they can pull from other teams, that have had success in turn things around. Not that the Chiefs had turned things around because they've been successful for a long time. I want to get that into a bit, but first, let's continue to talk about this season because, like I said, Raiders fans have been waiting for the Chiefs to not be the Chiefs anymore. So why was that the case this season? Where did things fall apart for them? Because middle of the season, it looked like they were trending back to being that same team.
Well, I think the first and easiest one that people will go to, which I think is not wrong, but slightly overblown and I think a little lazy. And that's the variance conversation, or the luck, as I think a lot of people put it. I say variance because it's football, it's the NFL. Variance is the way I view this. Last year, when they went 15-2, 15-1, really, variance was in their favor. Every single one score. I mean, the Chiefs Raiders game. You play that game 100 times, that final situation, Raiders probably win 65%, 70%, maybe even more. But it would have been like a 51-yard field goal, but it was Daniel Carlson. He's a good kicker. Like again, the majority of the time, the Raiders win that game. The Broncos game, that kick 90% of the time, they win that game, but it was blocked. The Chiefs win that game. I mean, there was just a plethora of overwhelming evidence that they had variance on their side. This year, it's been the complete opposite. And this is not a ref conversation, but it does feel like every single big-time moment, the Chiefs have a penalty, their fault. Not the ref's fault, the Chiefs' fault, that kills them. Whether it's a touchdown wiped off the board because Jawan Taylor was lined up off sides as a right tackle. Whether it was, you make a big play defensively, but Chris Jones was off sides. I mean, the list goes on and on, just time and time again in big-time moments. The Chiefs did dumb things. Patrick threw some interceptions in the red zone where just kicked a field goal. But I think the biggest issue, not just variance, not just luck, it's the scheme is the exact same as it has been since 2022. People don't like to hear it. Kansas City, some folks have tried to give me pushback, but it's pretty simple. 2022 was the first year without Tyreek Hill. First year. And that may be the best Chiefs team, at least offensively, we have seen. Patrick won MVP, 5,200 yards. It was incredible because they revamped and retooled everything on offense. Well, 2023, they win a Super Bowl, but the offense took a step back. Patrick Mahomes, after the Super Bowl win, said it wasn't quite as fun this year. It was more of a grind because defenses knew what they were doing. Well, then 2024 happened. They still stood with the same game plan because why would you change when you win back-to-back Super Bowls, right? You're not going to change. So you go 15-2 in the regular season and you make it to the Super Bowl and get BTA, belt to ass. Yeah. But you still made the Super Bowl for the third time in 3 years. So why are you going to change? Well, then this year the wheels fell off. Every team knows what the Chiefs do offensively. It's the RPOs. It's handoff out of shotgun. It's these slants to Rashee Rice where safeties knew where he was going before Rashee Rice knew where he was going. It's just tired. It was incredible in 2022. But when you've done it now for 4 straight years and don't change, this is the result.
Well, and so I'm curious hearing you say that. Like, do you think it's over for them? Do you think the dynasty is over? Or do you think this is a deal where they're going to be able to adapt and kind of get back on track?
No, I trust Andy Reid. I know some people in Kansas City are just furious and they're calling him old and washed. And I think it's just, I think that we see how it ended in Philly, and people are pointing to that and saying, well, that's how it ended in Philly, so that must be how it's going to end here. And I sit back and go, he never won a Super Bowl in Philly, let alone 3. And by the way, that was a slow few-year decline. It wasn't just a one-year situation. I think people just see that and try to make the connection when I think it's a vastly different situation. I don't think it's over because I trust him to finally adjust. I think it was a situation of, you've gone to 3 straight Super Bowls. Why would we adjust? I know we probably need to, but what if we adjust and it doesn't work? Then what happens? Then everyone second guesses you of saying, well, why'd you change? It was working. And so now I think he is forced to. So the Chiefs, 6-10, 6-11, 7-10, if they finish up that way, I think we're all sitting here going, this might be the best for the long term. Long term, you will now have 0 excuses to change. Now, if he doesn't change next year, then there will be some strong conversations to be had. But at least me, I'm sitting here going, yeah, I'll give one of the greatest coaches in NFL history the benefit that he will have an offseason now to adjust and change.
Yeah, and speaking of needing to go through some stuff for the betterment of the future, the Raiders are obviously in that situation. And I'm curious for you, because I love getting everyone's perspective on this from afar. Like, why do you think the Raiders have been so bad this season in particular? Obviously, they have not been a good team for quite some time, but this year is a different level of bad for them. I'm curious your perspective on why that seems to be the case from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I don't get it. The past 2 years, I've not understood, quite frankly. I was one of the few people outside of Vegas that probably was high on them. And high is a relative term. I wasn't saying they're a playoff team, but I said they might go 9-8. They might go, if things go their way, 10-7. They'll probably miss the playoffs, but they'll be competitive. And I thought that with the final year of Antonio Pierce, because I thought, okay, the defense will be great. They'll run the football. They'll do some of the little things, and they like to play for Antonio Pierce. Well, I was wrong. That rah-rah stuff just did not work. I thought he was bringing back the Raiders culture of the olden days, and it didn't work at all. You have to have the right OC in DC, and the Raiders didn't. And this year, I really don't get. Yeah. Geno Smith was good in Seattle, which, by the way, this tells me this is a Raiders issue, not a Geno issue. I don't think Geno's great, but Geno was really solid in Seattle. Sam Darnold goes to Seattle, really damn solid, an MVP-esque type of candidate, not quite there, but still really good in Seattle. Well, either you're saying Geno fell off a cliff or Seattle, where good coaching happens, is the difference here. I'm not 100% blaming Pete Carroll. I don't think it's all his fault. I don't know if he knew completely what he was getting into, but there is a lot of dysfunction clearly with the Raiders, whether it's from the top, whether it's the OC, whether it's Pete Carroll himself, but there's a lot of hands at play, because when you have what I thought was a top 20-esque type of quarterback, that 15 to 22 range, when you have a top 15 running back probably towards that range in Ashton Genty, you have the top 3 tight end, probably the best, in Brock Bowers. You had some decent wide receiver weapons. I mean, Jacoby Myers was a wide receiver too before he was traded. Trey Tucker was intriguing. Obviously, you draft, Besh. Offensively, I didn't think that they would be this bad. And that's maybe where the most confusing part is. Defensively, you can make the case of, I understand a little bit. Offensively, I didn't get how they were this bad. And this is where it comes down to scheme. Perpetually for me. This has been my overarching theme this year. Look at Chicago. Yeah. Look at the 49ers, what they're doing with Sky Moore and Demarcus Robinson and the Jake Tonges. Like you just look around. To me, it's almost scheme more than player. I think it really is, because I don't think the Raiders are. Look at New England.
Look at Jacksonville.
He's throwing. Yes, but like New England's throwing to Booty and Hunter Henry and the old version of Stephon Diggs, and they look good. Like, to me, this is schematics more than player in this current year of 2025. And they had bad scheme, and whether that's Pete Carroll being old or the OC, I don't know. But I am shocked the Raiders were this bad.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of us are, because we saw a different team at training camp for sure, but it is one of those deals where, I agree with you that this was a Raiders problem overall. I mean, so many times over the years specifically too, we've seen a lot of players leave Vegas and go and have success in other teams with different coaches around there. And, also too, I don't think anybody could predict it would have been this bad when you go and you pair a Pete Carroll, who has had success in this league, a Geno Smith, who has had success in this league. They come here, they have their worst years that they ever have as a coach and as a quarterback. And then also you pair it with some of the injuries too, which is a thing. But like you said, even with the Niners and some of these teams, they're doing it with guys where the Raiders probably had better personnel at a lot of the positions, even at receiver too. I mean, there's plenty of teams that have done it around the league. So I'm real curious to see what happens in the offseason here. I do think the Raiders move on from Pete Carroll and a new coach comes in, and they need to finally have somebody that can come in and set a foundation. And speaking of that, we know Andy Reid has had a long tenured time there in Kansas City. What is it, 13 years now is in the middle of his, or the end of his 13th season here, I believe.
Yeah.
And, so he's been able to set a real foundation. He's had the continuity with his coordinators for the most part. I know Nagy has left, and I know each of those guys have come and gone. But for the most part, it's been Big Red leading the charge and guys all falling in behind him. And that foundation has been there. How critical is it to have that over the course of, obviously a decade, but even a couple seasons to be able to set that foundation?
I think it's great for about 5-year windows. I think that unless you not Matt Nagy, that's maybe some part of the issue. Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo has been outstanding, and he's one of the rarities where you go, I don't care how long he's there, I want him there. Dave Merritt, the defensive backs coach, I don't care how long he's there, I want him there forever. But I think at times you need to bring in fresh thoughts. And this is more offensive than defensive. I think defensively is more stagnant-ish to an extent. Like I think, you can adjust and change. But offensively, it feels stale. And this is why I say 5 years. Because Doug Peterson had his, Matt Nagy had his first time around, Eric Bieniemy had his, and then you bring back Matt Nagy and you're doing the same thing from his first iteration, but teams know that. They know that. And so you need a new thought process in the organization. And that's just a different coaching tree. Someone from McVay's coaching tree or Kevin O'Connell or Shanahan, someone who can bring something different in to challenge Andy Reid and make him adjust. I think the Raiders need the same thing. Yeah. Continuity matters a lot. Like getting it right. That matters a lot. Like the Eagles, for example, they've had a hard time having back-to-back years of greatness because they keep losing coordinators. They'll get a good pairing, then a bad pairing, then a good pairing, then a bad pairing. Yep. And you've noticed that step back record-wise, specifically with their OCs and DCs. So continuity does matter, but I think you almost want to have a 5-year window or at least a injection of new every couple seasons to at least not get stale.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm curious, I mean, on that regard, you mentioned some different coaching trees and stuff like that. The simple fact that the Raiders are looking for, a new head coach more than likely at the end of the season. Who are some of the guys that you think will be in the coaching pool that would be interesting gets for the Raiders, or guys that have you kind of caught your eye? And I think they probably do need to lean more offensively. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the issue is, and I feel for Raiders fans, which is hilarious. Me saying I feel for Raiders fans. Yeah. At some point, it's like the horse is dead. Stop beating it. Like, let's try and I don't know, at least use it for meat or something. No, this is not a good coaching cycle.
It's the really Raiders. There's not a Ben Johnson out there. That's the thing, or at least doesn't seem to be.
The Raider, and then a couple years ago. I mean, the Ravens probably should have kept Mike McDonald, right? And then Seattle's reaping the rewards. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard. I know Matt Nagy is a name for the Chiefs. He's the Chiefs OC. I don't think he's a good offensive coordinator. I think he's a good head coach. Like, I think he's one of those guys. Some guys are good head coaches and not good coordinators. Some guys are great coordinators, but not good head coaches. That's more of the what you'll see is great coordinators, but not a head coach. Yeah. Matt Nagy went 34-31 with the Bears, with Trubisky as his quarterback, and then Justin Fields. I'm not saying that he is this top 10 head coach, but I don't think he's this boob that people like to make him out to be. And they made fun of his time in Chicago. And I'm like, that guy went 34-31 with Trubisky and Justin Fields. At some point, you have to say, that's a pretty damn good job coaching. I don't know. I don't know what the Raiders do at head coach, but they need to get younger. Pete Carroll, in the words of Andy Reid, I feel for him. That's just, I don't know. I thought the Raiders were going to be returning to respectability, and they did not. So at this point, you have to just blow it up again, and go younger.
No, and I think that's the way they go. One interesting name for me out there would be Clint Kubiak. Again, is he a Ben Johnson? Who knows? You just have to wait and see. But I like the way that he's used a lot of the 12 personnel, multiple tight end sets up there in Seattle, and has relied upon. And look, not that there's just Jackson Smith and Jigba's sitting out there waiting to be grabbed, but he has been so good for them, obviously. And I like what they've done. I'm curious to see how he factors into things. But obviously, look, one of the main reasons why the Chiefs have done what they've done over the course of the years is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, hitting on both of those guys. And there's not just a Patrick Mahomes always sitting out there either. But what stood out to you ever since Patrick Mahomes arrived, how they built around him as a team, and maybe how the Raiders can learn some lessons from that?
So I think that the Chiefs have built this the way the Patriots did. And it's the reason why I think the Bengals specifically have struggled so much. I think the Bills have been much closer. I know that they have not made a Super Bowl, and the Bengals did, and I get the injuries play a massive part of this, but I think I've said it. I've been consistent with this. I think the Bills have always had a brighter, consistent outlook than the Bengals for the reason of they're not I don't want to say even overpaying. They're not paying wide receiver, not only one of them, but two of them top-end money. You can't do that if you have a game-changing quarterback. People will say, well, it's not fair to the quarterback to not give him an elite weapon. It's not fair. make them have to score 45 points a game to win, because the Chiefs went through that in 2018, and they didn't win in 2018. They didn't win it because they had to put up 40 points a game. They put up 51 and lost to the Rams.
Yeah. Like, that's crazy. Yeah.
So what did the Chiefs do? Well, they focused a lot on defense. And then you focus on the offensive line. Now, the next thing for Kansas City is the run game. There's no run game in KC. You got to at least not completely neglect it. So if I'm the Raiders, and let's say you draft a quarterback and you get it right, you really got to focus on that defense. And if it's trading Crosby to get multiple first rounders so you could sink that in multiple spots, again, I don't know how you trade Crosby. I think that's pretty dumb. Just even culturally speaking, I think then you become a rudderless ship. At least you have Max Crosby there, who I just respect the hell out of. I think it's almost a curse of focusing too much on wide receiver. You hit on him in the draft. You can draft him in the first and second round, but once you get into that second contract, that's when you're sitting here going, if you are that good of a quarterback, you elevate that guy. The Sam Darnolds need JSN on the second contracts, right? Josh Allen, would it be great if he had, a really good wide receiver one? Sure, but he elevates all those. He elevates the Curtis Samuels and the Khalil Shakurs, right? He does, because they're spending money on Deion Dawkins and as well as on the defense. And so he's not having to go out and put up 40 every game. It's why the Bengals have been stuck in mediocrity, in my opinion, and they're still reliving 2021. It's just they built that so poorly. So if you get the quarterback right, I think it's the biggest misconception of having to give him a wide receiver one. I think it's the opposite. Spend that money on the defense and the offensive line.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really shrewd take on that one, because, I mean, again, so many times people think, okay, get that quarterback and really invest around him with the playmakers and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's those teams that invest in the trenches, that really get it done. Like you said, invest in that O-line, build up the defense, especially too. And this is one we talked about before we got it rolling, that we looked at the Texans as a possible blueprint to follow. They go and draft Will Anderson and CJ Stroud in the same draft. The Raiders already have a Will Anderson type player, obviously, in Max Crosby out there. I think he's better than Will Anderson, obviously, but they have a guy like him that they can build around defensively. Now it is just a matter of finding that quarterback. And I agree, you hammer that offensive line. And that's one thing that the Chiefs did after that loss to the Bucs in the Super Bowl. Their O-line was atrocious in that one. The Bucs lit them up. Todd Bowles was bringing the heat, and Mahomes got sat down so many times in that game. I forget what the exact number was, but man, they got lit up. And then that next offseason, the Chiefs hammered the O-line, right? And they did it mostly, if I can remember right, mostly through free agency, and then added a couple pieces in the draft, right?
Yeah, and then now they've done a lot of they've done both. I mean, even this year, because they drafted Josh Simmons in the first round. Year prior, it was a second rounder who's now left guard. It's a first rounder, Creed Humphrey at center. Trey Smith's now on the second contract, and the right side was Juwan Taylor. He's going to get cut. That was a really disappointing signing. But they brought in Jalen Moore last year just in case as their swing guy. He'll be there at right tackle, so you have a veteran there. This year's a little different at the end of the season. So many guys have been injured. It's to the point where, hey, they did the right thing. They invested a lot and got it right on the offensive line. But when you have, 4 tackles go down, sorry, at some point you'll eventually start playing some UDFAs, and that's what the Chiefs are at right now with Chu Godric and Esapole.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's one thing too, though, that stands out. I actually read this earlier, that from 2020 to 2024, the Chiefs were middle of the road in terms of money spent in the offseason. I think they were 18th in the league, and so I think that speaks to the fact that they've hit on a lot of draft picks, but the free agency picks that they bring in brought them in at some solid positions. So I just think that's the other thing too, speaking to the Chiefs, they have hit on so many young guys and have been able to develop them over the years too, right?
Yeah, I think that's the Raiders' biggest issue. And again, the Chiefs have done. I know Chiefs fans at times you get spoiled. I mean, let's be real. We're spoiled. You see greatness, and so you expect. Well, if you're not winning the Super Bowl every year, it's a bust of a season. So then you start doing that with players. Where if a first-round draft pick is brutal, you're going here. Well, that's a horrible draft pick. Everyone knew that was wrong, and all. Yeah, like Clyde, we knew that was a bad draft pick. At least a lot of us did. We're that's a dumb pick. But at the same time, you could try and talk yourself into how it made sense. It's not like they're missing on top 5, top 10 draft picks like the Raiders have been. Those are the ones that hurt more.
Big time.
Right? Those are the ones that really, really hurt. The Clelin Ferrells of the world. Like, those are the ones that are just, and I don't want to say franchise alternate because it's unfair to put it on one guy, obviously, or one draft or anything like that.
Well,
but
if you go back, and I hate
Chiefs,
to jump in here right now, but you go back even to the 2-year stretch after they traded Khalil Mack, they had a handful, I think it was 5 first-round picks in 2 years. Josh Jacobs was the only guy that came out of those picks that was actually good. Other than that, Henry Ruggs, who was good but had circumstances off the field that were out of the team's control, obviously. Damon Arnett, a corner who ended up being a bust and is no longer in the league anymore. Obviously, you guys have played that game with Damon Arnett before. And then Jonathan Abrams and Cleveland Farrell. So like that, like you said right there, that is exactly what you're speaking to, is busting in a big way where those guys just aren't even one on your team, and many of them out of the league too.
Yeah, again, even for Clyde, I mean, he was at least solid for 3 years. I mean, FAU has been the biggest, maybe the one that hasn't even played at all for KC. That was when the draft was in Kansas City, and there's, I think, some extra circumstances there that went into that draft pick. But they hit on so many other guys. They have so many players, even this past draft class. I mean, you would say, Josh Simmons, you hit on him at left tackle. I know they spent a second rounder last year on Kingsley to be your left tackle. He busted. Oh, but then he turns into a above average top 10-ish left guard in football. Okay, so you're getting production out of him, even if it's a position that you didn't expect. Trey Smith was a 6th rounder. Rashee Rice had a down year, but that was a second round draft pick. Worthy had a down year, but that's a first round draft pick. But like, you still are sitting here saying, well, you're at least getting value. It's not Keon Coleman, who's, being sat in Buffalo as their early second round draft pick. I think that there's something to that. The Chiefs find ways a lot of times to get value out of a lot of players in the draft, even if they're not first rounders. They do very well rounds 4 through 7 that most teams, those guys don't even see the roster. Again, hit on quarterback, be good in the draft. It's really not that hard from the outside looking in, although it is very hard to hit on those guys. I think a thing that stands out as well as you look over the years with a lot of these picks, even, guys like Jaden Hicks. I know Reed was the safety back there that kind of helped bring him along. They had a lot of veterans that these guys were able to learn from. Obviously with Rashee, he's not a tight end, but you look at Travis Kelce and the work that he's done in teaching him and growing him. So I think that, again, goes back to the simple fact of, like, the Raiders needing a foundation and vets that have been in that system for a while to be able to impart that knowledge upon those guys too, right? Yeah, and that's why I say you can't lose Max Crosby unless you are beyond blown away. And one, I love the rivalry of him and Patrick. It's just so fun. And I've talked with Crosby about it multiple times, and I just have such an immense amount of respect for him. I remember one time I was like jokingly trying to get him to come to KC, and he was basically like, no, I like going against you guys. Like, it's more fun to almost bring that rivalry aspect into the game. You need that. You need a leader. And if you want a baseball perspective, I said it with the Royals with Salvador Perez. When the Royals were 65-97 after winning a World Series, everyone was going, trade Salvi. Get something for him. There's a lot of value in a catcher, valuable position. This was in 2021.
Yeah.
And the Royals said no. And he ended up being a part of the next playoff run for the Kansas City Royals. Now, they didn't make the playoffs this year. They went 82-80. But the year prior, they went and lost in the ALDS to the Yankees. But he at least was still there for that next playoff run. And that, I think, was invaluable for the younger guys of seeing a guy who's been there, done that. I think Crosby is the same thing. I don't think you're ever getting the true value for him because, it's not like he's had a lot of success. He's played one playoff game for the Raiders. But he's still the leader, the captain, and the guy that I think everyone turns and looks to. He is the Vegas Raiders because he only played 1 year in Oakland. Like, if you had to say who's the face of the Las Vegas Raiders, it's Max Crosby. And I just don't think you can trade him unless you were, again, just an absurd haulback.
Each and every year, as they cycle through the different coaches and so many players that have kind of been a revolving door here in Vegas, like on the billboards all next to the freeways and stuff like that, we're always wondering, who's going to be up there? For quite a while, it was Daniel Carlson and AJ Cole. No shade on them, but they're specialists. Like, come on, and then now we've seen Max on the billboards and also Pete Carroll, and it's like, God, so Max is your only guy. He is the face of the franchise. You can't get rid of him. I don't think they're going to. I don't think he's going to ask to be traded either. I think this whole thing has been blown out of proportion. So I like your take on all of that to keep him here. Earlier when you were talking about it, I thought you were going to say they should trade him. I was like, oh God, I'm like, people in the comments of this video are going to go nuts on Sterling. So I'm glad that you said that. But let's get you out of here on this one, Sterling. We've gone on really long, and you're always so gracious with your time, man. So I want to know what you think actually does happen at Allegiant Stadium this weekend, in which you said is going to kind of be a tankathon here between these two teams. Who walks away the winner in the sense of winning the game, but the loser obviously comes away with better draft positioning?
Yeah, no one wins. The biggest loser are the people that pay money to go to this game.
Yeah,
sorry, season ticket holders.
Yeah.
I like Allegiant though. I went there for the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it was I liked Allegiant. It was pretty cool. It was fun. I guess Chiefs probably win. I just think the Raiders are too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the Chiefs are good stopping the run. I mean, they've been good defensively, even with all the pieces out. So I'll say it's a low-scoring game. It's probably like 17-13 Chiefs. It's going to be gross. I don't know the over-under set at, but I think it'll be...
Bet the under, yeah. I would imagine.
Hard-pressed going over 30 points.
Yeah, no, I'd be right there with you in that one, man. I think this is probably the first time that Raiders fans will be happy to hear you say the Chiefs are going to beat them. Obviously, many of them rooting for that to lock down the top pick. Sterling, as always, thanks, man. Before we get you out of here, for any of the folks that do want to listen to you, hear your work on the Chiefs, I know they don't like to go behind enemy lines to the Chiefs too often, but as I can tell, you are very fair right down the road, and you're a guy that speaks highly of the Raiders at times when it's due. So tell them where they can find your work.
Yeah, Sports Radio 810 here in Kansas City every day, Monday to Friday, 10 to the midday show. We do that called The Zone, so you can check that out. We have great guests on every single week from Field Yates to Cynthia Freeland, just the list goes on. And then I also do stuff on Arrowhead Addict, which is a site owned by Fansided, mostly Chiefs talk, but we obviously will sometimes go behind enemy lines, and we'll also have great guests on. We've had Max Crosby on a few times as well, so we do have some Raiders on here and there. We had Josh Jacobs on, so we switch it up here and there, so we have some fun.
Yeah, at the very least, go find his work, comment, tell him, hey, say thanks for being nice to the Raiders from time to time. I think that at the very least they can go do that. Sterling, as always, man, we appreciate the time. I'm sure we'll be catching up with you next season.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, shout out to Sterling. That was another fun conversation. You guys have seen him on the podcast before. We obviously had him on the last time that the Raiders and the Chiefs played, and I do think that he is very fair. So I hope you guys enjoy it when I have him on the show. We'll definitely be bringing him on, maybe in the offseason or just next year when the Raiders actually play the Chiefs again. Because again, I like him, and I think it's hard to find Chiefs people that will talk respectfully about the Raiders, and he does that. You heard his thoughts on Max, but overall, like, he's a very level-headed dude. He is a fan of the Chiefs, but he doesn't bash the Raiders unnecessarily. So I like his perspective. I think he's good. And it's an entertaining back and forth. Like, he'll play the game. So it's always fun. Let's move forward now. Obviously, this is our Friday episode. Normally, we would get to Raiders Rounders with our guy, Matt Perrault. He's on vacation, though. Much deserved. That dude grinds it out all the time. He's taking some time off around the holidays. So instead, we're going to skip Raiders Rounders this week because let's be completely honest. Last week, we talked about it. He didn't want any part of the Raiders game against the Giants. Similar situation in this one. I haven't texted him because I've wanted him to be able to enjoy his time off in a way because, again, like I said, he grinds. But if I'm a bettor, which I'm not, like, I just go and I love talking about this stuff with him. Like, I don't put my money up on this stuff. I've been very upfront about that. I don't have the stomach to gamble and do all those things. But some of you guys do, and so I think it's interesting to do it. And I love talking about the numbers and hearing about this stuff from a betting perspective. And you go and look at this game, the Raiders come into it as 5.5-point underdogs against the Chiefs at home, even in their current form. Now, there's a lot of ways to kind of wrap your head around that one, obviously, as we talked about with Sterling and everything like that, with Andy Reid and the success that they've had. And yes, I know this is a down year for them, but it's Travis Kelce's last year, probably last game, all that stuff. They're going to want to feed him the rock. I just would not touch this game because there's so many different ways this can go. We talked about it with Sterling and so many times with Ryan and everybody that this could be like Pete Carroll being like, nah, I ain't going out like this. And then they somehow find a way to win the game. Or it could be the Chiefs being the Chiefs, even no matter who's out there, and the Raiders just being that bad and they're not able to stick with it. I just don't know how to wrap my head around this number, this line. So I would just stay away from it. I wouldn't bet it. But again, I'm not the pro that Matt is. But if you're asking me, don't bet this game. Just watch it as a fan. Root for the number one pick if you want. Root for Ashton to break the rookie record for total scrimmage yards. Whatever it is, however you're going to go about doing it. Having said all of that, I'll give you my pick for the game. I do think that the Raiders actually end up losing this game because I think that's just where they're at. Even against this version of the Chiefs, I don't think the Raiders can get it done. I think we're going to see a similar outing like we saw against the Giants. The Giants are a really bad team. The Chiefs are a team that's got a system that's been in place for so long. They have continuity. They have all that stuff. And I just think the Raiders are at that point. Also, too, we talked about it on our socials and stuff from my coverage down there at the Raiders facility. We're going to see both Kenny Pickett and Aiden O'Connell play in this game. It kind of has a bit of a preseason feel to it. So I think that's how Pete and them are going to treat it, even though they're going to go out there and try and win. Obviously, the bombshell for a lot of folks out there really mad about the fact that Cam Miller has gone and left to Miami. That's a tough one to swallow too, I think, for the simple fact that with Geno and his health situation, it was very clear. Pete had said it when we spoke to him on Wednesday that he wasn't going to play in this game. So you could have shut him down and then, maybe moved him to IR and activated, Cam Miller and put him on the active roster to avoid someone from scooping him, especially when you invest some draft capital in him. So that's a tough one to kind of wrap your head around. But hey, good opportunity for Cam moving forward. It's just one of those deals where, like, hey, quarterbacks are in high demand and teams are going to take shots. And they poach him off of there. So I hope he gets the opportunity. But, man, that's a missed opportunity to maybe throw him in there and get him a look. Because I think we do know what Kenny Pickett is. And let's be completely honest. I know a lot of you guys really like Aiden O'Connell. I think we know what Aiden O'Connell is. I personally think he's a backup. I love the guy. I love both him and Kenny too. But I think both of them are backups going forward. With Cam, that could very likely be the case. Obviously, coming from the level of competition that he's come from, we haven't seen him since training camp. But at least let the kid get out there. Let's see what he can do. And he's not going to get that opportunity with the Raiders. So we'll see what his career looks like going forward. But we talked to Greg Olson, and he said, yeah, it sucks to lose him. Talked about his intelligence and the way that he prepares and all that stuff that could be successful. We'll see how it pans out. But like I said, guys, I think the Raiders do lose this game. I think they lock down the first overall pick. And then the craziness really starts. We switch to the offseason, and we start looking and dissecting more Fernando Mendoza or whoever the heck emerges as the top quarterback. Like I said, I think it's going to be Mendoza. So we're going to be doing a lot of talk about Mendoza, doing deep dives with so many different people throughout the offseason, really breaking him down. You guys know that I like to bring a lot of friends onto the show to explain things that maybe I don't see or give me their perspective. I love differing perspectives. So I'm excited for the offseason. We'll see what happens with Pete Carroll. I've said it many times. I do think the Raiders are going to move on from him. So then the coaching search starts and all that stuff. So we'll be diving into a lot of that as well if that does indeed end up happening. So even though the season's coming to a close, there's still going to be so much to talk about with the Raiders. I'm excited for all that because now it kind of turns into the what-if situation to put this season behind you and start to move forward. I like those what-if scenarios, so I can't wait to bring on all my friends and talk about all of that and engage with you guys about it as well. In the meantime, though, guys, thank you for watching and listening and commenting, all of that stuff. You guys are awesome. Hope you guys have had a great start to your new year. And next time we see it, we'll be back at Allegiant Stadium for the season finale against the Chiefs. It's crazy that it's already come and gone, even though at times it's felt like it's been a long season because of how bad the Raiders have been. But at the end of the day, it still sucks that football is going to be done for us. We're not going to be watching football in person anymore. But hey, we can all go back to being fans of football and watching the other games and stuff. And in the meantime, thank you guys, like I said again, for watching and listening. And we'll catch you guys on Sunday. Have a good one.